All right, running a lot of software right now, so hopefully this doesn't crash and burn. Check, check. So just before we start from the beginning, we're not going to start from the beginning with this footage for all the reasons I talked about already. But this is it in Unreal now. It's choppy because it's buffering, but it worked. So this is what I'll give you for those of you that want to attempt it, which you should. But it is a lot of work. All right, so I have given you, you don't need to download this if you just want to watch, but the footage that I'm using is available to download here, the tracking zip file. That tracking zip file has some stuff that we've seen already. Some checkerboard patterns that we're going to use, and has, I don't think we're going to track that one, but this is just a dumb hallway scene. It tracks great in After Effects. And then it has that green screen footage that we looked at. Lots of tracking marks on this one. It's just a pretty simple camera dolly move. And then we also have the garden one that we looked at. So whether it's green screen or actually out in the real world, like in the garden, it's the same process. Green screen allows you to more easily put things behind people because it's green screen. You can key it out. Putting something behind her in the garden means you're going to have to rotoscope her out. Or, putting something behind the leg here. This is a combination of the green screen and the real world because we have the floor. So, rotoscoping the floor, or rotoscoping out the lower body, but the upper body is taken care of, which makes things easier. I mean, hair is the hardest part to key anyways. Key well. Please ask questions and stop me if you need to. So in After Effects, I'm going to import, oops. My mouse died today, so I'm rocking the trackpad. I'm going to import all of that stuff. Find it. Checking. We're going to do the green screen one. I'm just going to import both right now. We're going to do the green screen one, and then we're going to do the garden one as well. We'll only pick one to go throughout the whole process, but I just want to track multiple ones to start with. All right, so I'm going to create a new composition from this. This is an After Effects class, so I'm not going to go into all the ways to do that. I'm just going to pick the easiest way that I think. I'm going to right click on it, new comp from selection, so that I get the footage. Now, if you don't want to use the whole thing, then you trim it down to the portion that you need. You don't need to track everything if you're not using everything. Although I will say that sometimes it can be useful in footages that have more difficult tracks to have a little bit extra breathing room to track, even if you're going to trim it down in the end. But in this case, I think I'll just track the whole darn thing. Okay, so just need to select the footage and then go over to the tracker panel on the right side. If it's not expanded, you can expand it. If it's not there, then you can go to Window, Window Effects, and then you'll get all these, and then you can open it up there. There's a couple different methods of tracking in After Effects. We're not tracking objects, we're tracking the camera. So we click Track Camera. Click it. and it's doing its thing right away. You don't just have to sit there and wait. This can take a while depending on how long your footages are, how high resolution they are, how difficult they are for the software to calculate. You can see that it's, well, it paused already. It pauses when I zoom in, but it's still tracking. But even just me talking, it's 32% of the way through. Now it's 70% of the way through. Chewing through this footage, laying down and tracking different features in the video footage throughout its duration. After that, it solves the camera. This process can take a little while. So if it hasn't said failed, just be patient. If it takes like an hour and your computer's frozen, just probably try it again, maybe. All right, so it tracked already for 8-second clip. You can see the little colorful marks. I'm gonna increase the size of them so you can see them a little bit better. Increasing the size of them is not super important. You have target track point size and target size. The target is this little bullseye symbol that we're gonna see in a second, but the track point size is the little dots. So I'm just making them bigger so you can see them. Actually, you know what? Let's zoom in. Screen. If you play, they disappear. Don't freak out. They're still there, but I'm just playing. So I'm just going to scrub rather than playing. And see, if you pick one, pay attention to it, they stick. Notice sometimes they disappear. Sometimes they reappear. That's because at different camera angles, different things get tracked. Remember when I showed you in that Buju one with the red and green strips? There were some points that I was tracking a mark and it was good, and then it started to turn red, and then it just stopped tracking. Maybe because the person covered it up, maybe because there was too much motion blur and the software couldn't detect it anymore. Lots of different reasons. As long as we have enough things to track throughout the duration of the video, we're all right. Doesn't matter if we have to stop tracking one, if we can pick up on another one. So that's why they pop in and pop out. And some stay the entire time. Like this little tuft of grass right here. It's visible in the video the entire time. She never covers it up. It's never out of camera. So it's just stays there. All right, so that's the first step. If you are able to track the footage, congratulations, that's the first step. This is not always this easy. Depending on your footage, it might fail right away. Some reasons that it might fail, we've talked about before. Maybe there's too much motion blur. Maybe you have a person in the severe foreground and they're talking or something and they're moving around a lot. That can cause a lot of problems. And you might have to mask them out to try to just track the background. Maybe it's on green screen, you didn't put enough tracking marks down. Ooh, I know that one. Maybe other reasons. I don't know, it's too dark, you didn't expose properly. It's a lot of other reasons that could happen. In this case, we have plenty. It's fine. So next step is we need to see, as I hover over this footage, if I zoom in here, you can see the little bullseye symbol now. As I hover over this footage and I move my mouse around, you can see that this little triangle gets created. It shows up on the TV, the little white outline of the triangle, and with the bullseye on top of it. It's connecting between 3 points to try to determine. It's basically asking us, yo, what is the floor in this? Okay? Which is a very important thing in camera tracking. We need to determine the floor so we can set things on the floor so that they all line up as the camera moves. Even if you have objects that are not sitting on the floor, maybe you want that video of me sitting here, maybe you wanted like a hovering thing. It's still important to determine the floor so you know how high to put it, right? Or if the camera gets closer to it, the object gets bigger. If the camera gets far away, the object gets smaller. It's super important to determine the floor. It is the most crucial thing that you can do. Notice that some of these are on her. I'm not tracking her. I'm not trying to The floor is not on her. The floor is on the ground, right? So I'm trying to find points that give me what looks like the proper perspective. Like this one seems like it looks pretty good, actually. Let me zoom out and try to, let me make my target a little bit bigger. Let's find, select that one. That doesn't really line up with the floor. This one is pretty close. And this floor, in this case, the ground, the dirt, call it the floor, it is the floor. It's different heights. You know, the dirt is roughed up with just big mounds of dirt that are like this high, maybe a little higher. There's holes that are sunken down a little bit. It's not a smooth floor. So what do we do in this case? Kind of have to just use our best judgment and pick kind of an average between things. So we can do that. We can not just rely on picking 3 points. We can left click and select a bunch, or in this case down here, it looks like there's more tufts of grass and like it's been dug up. Maybe I don't want to select those ones. Maybe I can go down here and select and select. I'm holding down left click and I can let go. So now it's doing an average of those points to make a floor. Are you happy with this floor? It's a question. Are you happy with this floor? Does it look okay? We need to select more floor. Slight hesitant nods. Great. I think this is acceptable. Another thing is the middle of that bullseye. We're going to set that as our 0, 0, 0 point. So the floor is 0 in height, right? But we're also setting our other dimensions. In this case, well, it's different in 3D softwares. In Unreal Engine, Z is up and down. In 3D softwares, Y is up and down. It's not important to know that or know why, but the important thing is that we're setting the 0 point, not just for the floor, but for X and Y as well. So with that selected, I don't want to scrub my footage or this will disappear and I'll have to lasso it back up. I don't want to click, it will disappear and I'll have to lasso it back up. I'm just going to right click anywhere on the bullseye and say set ground plane and origin. I would zoom in on this, but it would probably reset and I have to do it over again anyways. Set ground plane and origin. It's going to set the floor and it's going to set the XY position. So I click that and nothing really seems to happen. That's fine. And then I'm going to right click again. This isn't, no, this is the easiest way to do this. I'm going to right click again and say create solid and camera. This is going to give us that flat plane, like the green one that we looked at before in the beginning of class. It's going to create a flat plane that's stuck to, it's sitting on the ground, and it's going to also create a 3D camera. So now as I scrub this, flat plane stuck to the ground. This is where you clap. Damn. So congratulations, you've tracked something in After Effects. That's great. So like I said before, I like to put my, I would like to check with grids sometimes or checkered surfaces. Sometimes I'll duplicate the solid down here because the position of the solid has been set in 3D space. And a little After Effects trick, if you, this is not just good for tracking, it's good for anything in After Effects. If you have a video, or in this case, a graphic that you want to replace one of in your composition with another one, you can select the one you want to replace. Like in my case, the track solid one. I'm going to hold down Alt, I guess it's Option on the Mac, and click and drag this checkered texture on top of it, and it's going to replace the pink solid with the texture of the checkerboard. And it keeps the same position. So you don't have to manually go in and copy like the positions over. This is not, you don't have to do this step. I'm just showing you that we did a good job tracking. Okay. So I'm just going to blow this up a little bit. I'll zoom out. I'm gonna rotate it. I don't want to rotate it on the other axes. I'm just rotating it on the floor. I'm just spinning it. It's still sitting on the floor. I'm just rotating it, rotating the piece of paper on the floor. Maybe I'll scale it up a little bit more just to check. Maybe I'll stretch out this axis. And then I'm just going to turn down the transparency so I can see the ground. Again, this step is not required. I'm just showing you that it did in fact track. Beautiful. No sliding. Perfect. And it's not perfect actually because again, the ground is different heights. So if you really wanted to be nitpicky about it, some of those pieces of dirt should be higher than the pieces of grass. Maybe in 3D, we need to account for that by making a floor that has rough areas to it. But for our purposes in this as beginners, it's fine. All right. We should feel good about that. So now would be the next step where we would export this. So if I was ready to take this to Cinema, and go to File. I think you actually have to save the project first as an After Effects file, or it's going to yell at me. And go to File, Export, Maxon, Cinema 4D, Exporter. So it gives a warning, it says 2D layers will not be exported. That's fine. What that means is it's not going to export the video background. So that's why we have to go through those steps to set it back up in Cinema 4D with the background and the material, which we'll do in a little bit. So, okay. And it says where you want to save it. So save it somewhere. Ta-da! Now you have a Cinema 4D saved somewhere on your hard drive. We would double click that to open up Cinema. Let's do it again with the green screen footage. Same thing. And then we'll move on to the next step in Cinema. So green screen footage, like we have, except the floor is not green screen. Lots of tracking marks to track. First step, again, select the footage, put it in a composition, select it, go over to the tracker, track camera, click it. If you have footage from, say, your phone, and you're just using like the native camera app, and you're using the native stabilization that's built into it, stuff like that. I think I've talked about this before. Stabilization, software stabilization that's built into our phones can really mess up any sort of tracking because it kind of turns your footage into jello and like warps it just to try to stabilize your unsteady hand. I don't know if you can turn it off on iPhone, but I know you can turn it off in the camera app on Android. I would suggest if you want to record with your phone, I suggest that you download the Blackmagic app and use that. It also has some more advanced features than the native camera apps and will allow you to turn off stabilization or just use a proper camera. All right, so we have tracked this already. You can see as I hover around, I have some points, but they're a little hard to see, so I'm going to crank up the size. And as I scrub through this, notice some points don't even pop up until I'm halfway through the footage. Maybe they're slightly blurry because of the depth of field. Maybe the light was hitting them at a slightly weird way because of the shiny tape. Who knows? There's a lot of tracking marks on her, but we're not tracking her. Notice the walls always track better than the floor. It's because of that skew of the floor. Tracking green screen, a lot harder than tracking in the garden. Because again, outside or in the real world, even in this room, the carpet would make a lot of good trackers because there's like a pattern in it. If you wanted to track the tabletop, you could put little tracking marks here, or even the corners. So same thing, I'm gonna select some points. I don't want to select the points back here because it starts to swoop up on the walls. So I'm gonna select some points, try not to select her foot, loop around. That seems like it's set on the floor. So let's go with that. Let's try it out. Go ahead and try it. If it doesn't, once you have the solid plane on there, and you're like, this doesn't look as good as I thought it was going to, do it again. This is the most crucial step. If you don't do a good job here, it's going to get worse at every other step after this. So you should make sure you do as good as you can here. Otherwise, it's kind of a waste of time. So I selected the points. You don't have to select this many. You only need 3. I'm going to right click, set ground plane and origin. Nothing seems to happen, but it does. Right click again, create solid in camera. Make sure I'm recording. And that solid is, let's change the color of it real quick. So that's fine. Let's check it out. Play. Tiny bit of shift. If you do see some drift, what I mean by drift is it moves. It should look like it should not move. It should look like it's stuck to the floor. But I don't know if you can tell, but there's a slight bit of wiggle. Like it gets closer to the one mark in the top, and then it drifts away from it. Don't beat yourself up too much over it. Really depends on what you're trying to do with it. If in this case you're just putting a bunch of foreground objects in, you're not really going to even notice that. But if you actually want her to stand on something, then it's much more crucial that you have a better track because she's actually standing on a surface. It's not just a foreground that's covering up her feet, if that makes sense. For our purposes here, I think this is okay. How could you make it better? Go back and select different points. Select less points, select more points. I selected a bunch of points, so it made an average. Maybe I need to select less and not do an average, but just really hone in on a couple points to track. But still, I feel all right with this. If you can get this, then you should feel pretty good. Questions so far? All right, moving right along. So check this out. What if I made another one of these and I just dragged it up in space? I dragged it off the floor, so now it's floating. If I looked at its position, if I look at the position of both of these solids here, the one on the bottom is the first one. Notice that its y value is 0, 0, 0, 0. That makes sense because we told it to be created at 0, 0, 0. The second one that I raised up is now floating in the sky or in the air in front of her. Whether that makes sense or not depends on what you're trying to do. But I raised it up 2,000 units almost in this case. And now it should look like it's floating, but still stuck to the floor, right? So say you wanted in CG, I'm just making something up here. Say you wanted in CG, you wanted to, I don't know, put like rings around, like these, I don't know, these like alien rings come down and surround her body or something like that. You would want to try to locate this surface in 3D and place it around her. It's not going to make much sense now because she's not keyed out and I don't have a front or a back. But this looks like it bisects her body. And if I masked her out, I would have part of her body cut off by it and then part of it behind her. So it could start to place things in 3D space. If I rotated this in After Effects, it's not a 3D program, so this is kind of a novelty to do here. But if I rotate this surface, and I don't know, this is not crucial. This is just for fun, just showing you things. I start to place these 3D objects around the world, and then I play the camera. It's going to look like they're placed in the 3D world. We get that occlusion, that parallax effect, right? And the magic happens when they stop being flat planes and they start being 3D objects that are relevant to what you're trying to do, storytelling-wise. So I don't really need any of those other ones. There's just showing you. Same thing. We did a track. We set the viewpoint, the origin, and created the camera. I'm happy with how this is. There's not a ton of drift. Good. We can export this. Save it again. Then go to export. Export. Is it because I'm not clicked on the camera? If this is grayed out, just make sure that you're clicked on the 3D camera. Chances are I will screw up something. So many steps. Export Maxon Cinema 4D exporter. Again, we get the error message. Hey, there's 2D layers. These aren't going to be exported. That's fine. Where do you want to save it? That's cool. All right. Now we're done with After Effects. Until we come back to it next week in the end. Oh, this one again? Why don't we do, you want to do the garden one or the green screen one? Pick one. What? Green screen, okay. It's the same thing for both of them. What do we have to do? All right, so I have a blank Cinema 4D project here. If you don't actually have Cinema 4D and you only have Cinema 4D Lite, your best way to open it up is probably just going to be double clicking on the Cinema 4D file that you saved from After Effects. So I double click on it. I already have Cinema open, so it instantly opened. And now I scrub and I kind of see what I had before. Remember in After Effects, there it was. If I start at 0, then I go and look at Cinema at 0, they kind of look similar, right? Sometimes what I like to do even for After Effects, if I'm really paranoid, is I'll render this video out from After Effects with the solid and I'll bake it into the footage, and then I'll use that footage in Cinema 4D to make sure that everything I do in Cinema 4D matches up with the video that rendered out from After Effects. That's not essential. That's just if you're paranoid, which I am often. Right now, as I scrub this, you can already see one problem happening. It's a problem that I already talked about. Does anybody see what's happening here? It's not located in the right spot. You see that it's floating above the floor? You see that parallax that's happening with the grid? If it's sitting on the grid, there should be no parallax. So first thing that I need to do is click on, this is very crucial that you get this right. Click on the parent here, not the 3D tracker, not the solid, but the root, cells tracking 01.aep -hcw, blah, blah, blah. Click on that. Because by doing that, that allows me to move the solid and the camera together because they're parented. So in Cinema now, I select that, I go down, when you select it in the details panel here, or the attributes panel in C4D, I'm going to click coordinates. And it looks like it's misaligned. If I change this value here, it's set to 540, which is quite a high number. Set to 540. If I set this to 0, or even if I just move the number, you can see it getting closer to the grid. Oh, it passed through the grid right there. Don't eyeball this number. If I do it down here, now it's below the grid. So it's harder to tell. Now it's way below the grid. Now you can see it below the grid. It's really how our brains can identify that parallax. So that's how we walk around the world. Set that Y value to 0. Don't eyeball it. Don't guess. Set it to 0. Now it's sitting on the grid. No parallax now, right? It's flat on the grid. And if I looked in, this is hard to do with the mouse. Oops. If I looked in 3D, not in the camera view, that purple thing right there is the camera. You can see now it's sitting on the grid, right? Now I'm back in the camera. Somehow I accidentally turned on the frustrums for the camera. I don't know how to turn these off. Oops. Ignore those purple lines. Oops, I actually duplicated the camera too. That's what actually happened. Somewhere I hit Control D. There we go. All right, anyway, so we lowered the camera. That's good. It's sitting on the grid. That's good. Now let's bring in our video footage to make sure that everything has come over. Good. Once you understand how to do this, you could skip this step where we bring the video into Cinema 4D. It's not crucial for exporting the camera. It's just for our levels of paranoia to make sure that everything's tracking properly. Because here you could diagnose a frame rate problem. You could diagnose if it's not sitting on the grid. Any other errors you could solve without having gone into Unreal and then been like, oh, that got messed up in Cinema. So until you're comfortable, I suggest creating the background, but it's not necessary. So let's do that. Let's put the video in the background. So I go to Create, Environment, Background. Create Environment Background. Create Environment Background. When I zoom in and zoom out, everything resets. That's why I do it twice. And it turns white. That's fine. This background is not a 3D object in our world. It's like an infinite background behind everything. Now we need to put our video material on it. Click on the little material button up here, the little circle with the half moon upside down underneath it. Click on that. And we have one green material there for our solid right now. Now we need to create a new one by clicking on the plus. There's a lot of different ways to create materials in Cinema 4D. We're not learning Cinema 4D. We're just learning one way. So click the plus, you'll get a new material. It's white by default. Now we need to click on over here. If this disappears, whatever material you're clicked on, if you're not clicked on any, it's going to be nothing here. If I click on the green one, now I'm editing the green one. I can change the color of the solid. You know what? Maybe I should change the color because we're on green screen. If I click on the solid for the video that I'm making, now I can edit this one. So a couple things here. First step. Another useful thing too in those slides that we raced through in the beginning of class, I have like step-by-step screenshots of arrows to things too. So not only will you have the video to pause and rewind and listen to me over and over again say this, but I also have screenshots in the slides. So we need to set the texture. Oh, wow. There's actually a lot of overscan on this TV. You can't see. There's a little bit that's cut off on the right and left sides, the top and bottom. Didn't realize that. Well, there's a little folder over here on the right. You can see my mouse, or you can just click here too. And you're going to browse to the video footage that you're working with. In my case, it was the AE tracking, wherever that is. I really should clean up. I need to reset this computer. I'm going to browse to the video footage. Select the first one because it's an image sequence. Again, we're working with image sequences too. You don't need to use an image sequence in After Effects, but in all these other softwares, you should use image sequences rather than video files. It's going to ask you, do you want to copy all the video files over to this project? No, we don't need to do that. All right, there's the material. You can see her body on there. But we haven't, a couple things. We haven't put it on the background here yet. So we're going to drag it from here and just drop it on the background in the objects window. That will make the background have the material. You'll know that it has the proper material because it will have, well, in this case, the little green ball next to it that has the person on it. So if I scrub the footage, it doesn't play because I haven't told it to play. It's also very low res. So I can go back and edit the material again. These things can be done slightly out of order. If you want to do everything in the material first before you drag it onto the background, you can. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to double click on the material again. This is where we picked the video file. I need to click on, for some reason it already is, I need to click on that little animation tab right there that's purple right in the middle. So usually it's shader by default, but click on animation because this is an animation. It's an image sequence. And then also click on the, see right now it says start and end frame 0. It needs to calculate how many frames are in this footage. So click the calculate button. And now it's calculated that there's 214 frames in this footage. Still won't play though when I scrub the timeline. It's because I need to tell it to play. So I'm going to go to the viewport tab in that material. And a couple things that we can play around with here. We need to check that box animate preview. When we check the box animate preview, then when we scrub the timeline, it will play. Other thing is optional. It's going to make that blurry footage a little less blurry, a little more high resolution. Texture preview size. I usually like to increase this just, I'm trying to make sure that the 3D object is stuck very precisely to the tracking marks. I want to increase the resolution. Increasing the resolution will bog down your computer though. It will slow it down. So it got a little bit higher quality. And animate preview. Now, ta-da, it plays. It's at this point that you have a tracked camera from video footage in Cinema 4D. If you're a Cinema 4D head, you can go ahead and animate your scene here. Call it a day. You do all your rendering out of Cinema right from here. You've tracked your camera, and now you just need to build your world. And I guess do your compositing if you want objects behind her and your keying and stuff. This is, because this is a proper 3D program, maybe I should insert some 3D objects in here. Like, I don't know, a figure? I'm just using some of the default things. Just going to increase the size of this a couple times. Oh, not enough. I'm going to increase it by 10. Still not enough, but I guess that's okay. Oops. Now, this is not a crucial step. I'm just showing you that we have a properly tracked camera. And I would suggest putting some 3D objects in your world just to make sure that it's tracked. It doesn't have to be a figure. It could be cubes. It could be more planes. Maybe you want to place them on the tracking marks to make sure that they're stuck to it. Now when I play it, I have a bunch of little creepy dolls. And these would be animated objects too. Gosh, it's starting to happen. Cool. Why don't we keep those there? Let's go ahead and save for Cineware now. Any questions? Questions? You guys are, usually there's lots of questions here. Not to scare you. I'm gonna export this for Unreal now. File, or not export. If you have Cinema 4D Lite, like I'm using here, you actually can't export. You have to save the project for Cineware. Depends on the software. There's usually it would be like an FBX file. So exporting the FBX file with the camera in it, and then you can import that camera into Unreal Engine. You don't import it into Unreal. Remind me once we get Sequencer up in Unreal Engine, I'll show you where you would go to import the FBX file. You have to import it through Sequencer rather than through the content browser. So, okay.
So it's okay if the entire FBX file
Yes, but I think just the camera will import through Sequencer. In order to get the camera, the words coming out of my mouth right now have nothing to do with the pipeline that I'm teaching you. I'm just answering a very specific question about other pipelines. Importing it through Sequencer, I don't think would import any of the 3D objects, but you could then re-import the FBX file normally through the content browser. So then it would bring like the little figures in and the blocks and whatever you had in there. An even better way to do things would be to use like USD files, which are all the rage, but they have a different way of importing into Unreal too. It's not through the content browser. It's through, not through Sequencer either. It's through the, name is escaping me, but it's like USD Navigator or something like that. I don't know. It's another window in Unreal Engine. It's just a built-in plugin for the USD files. Through the FBX way, there's no plugins. It's just an FBX camera. I don't like doing the FBX camera. That's the way we used to do it with Maya, but it can import with a camera like flipped, and it's confusing to people that don't know 3D. Then how do I usually do it? Through Cinema, through the way I'm showing. Yeah. Although I'm starting to use the USD way. It's because USD is like all the rage. It's kind of a cool new file format. It's not new, but more widely adopted. When I open up Sequencer, remind me and I'll show you the menu place. Where were we? File, save project for Cineware. Not just save project for Cineware. That makes the C4D file Unreal Engine compatible. What do we want to call this? Desktop, green screen, tracking from C4D to UE. Sure, sounds good. Cool. Next step. Questions? Play questions. Open Unreal Engine. There's so much software open right now. Still recording. I guess since we're using the green screen footage, let's start another one. Although this, I'm going to give you the Cinema 4D file for this. It's the same exact thing as here. It's just, actually don't know what's in it. I think, oh, it's probably this stuff that's in it. There's probably 2 cubes and the checkerboard plane on the ground. So that's what you'd see in Cinema 4D. And then you go to File, Save As for Cineware, and then we can go to Unreal Engine. So for the Jedi thing, we've just skipped the After Effects part. But you still have to import it, and you still have to open it in Cinema 4D and then export it for Unreal Engine. All right, let's start a new level. Don't save. A couple things that you have to do. I already have these done. Remember, we need to turn on some plugins. So Datasmith plugin, C4D importer. You probably will get a warning when you import Cinema 4D file to update Maxon's newest plugin, blah, blah, blah. I have real world experience doing this literally yesterday, working on this project with a bunch of Cinema 4D 3D modelers, bringing assets into Unreal Engine for like a live XR thing. Sucks to do. Using the new plugin that it's literally frozen. I don't know why. So let's stick with this one. Ignore the pop-up that pops up. Maybe it will pop up for us, and I'll show you. So Cinema 4D, Datasmith Cinema 4D importer, and also image plate. Image plates. You could also do a lot of what we're doing today using Composure, which I mentioned earlier, but we're not going to go down that road. Composure has broken many students. I won't do that to you. So I've already enabled these so I don't have to restart, but once you enable them, it will ask you to restart, or you won't be able to do this. All right, first step, Unreal Engine, new map, whatever. Maybe you have an existing world, open your existing world, that's fine. You don't have to start with a blank map. And I'm gonna click on the little quickly add button up top here. Go down to Datasmith, go to File Import, so you can see where I'm at. The little green plus with the cube, scroll down to Datasmith, File Import. It's going to ask me where that Cinema 4D file is. It's on my desktop. This one, Cinema 4D to Unreal. It's going to ask me where I want to save it. You know what? I'm going to create a new folder. Call this green screen. Green screen. You don't have to create a new folder, but it's up to you. Click OK. It's going to ask you what you want to import. We don't have any lights. We don't really have any materials except for like the green on the floor, but that's not a big deal. Geometry, sure, let's import the geometry. That's fun. The geometry would be all the little figures and then the plane on the floor. Not the video background. We'll have to reset that up. So import. Whoa, look at that. They're in the world. That's neat. So when you import a Datasmith file, it will almost always automatically come in. Also know that now it has created a folder here, a folder in my folder. I think it's just named based on the C4D file name. Yep. And it creates this stuff. So the Datasmith scene file that I have clicked on here, the blue one, if you start a new map or something and you want to get everything back in the level, that's the thing that you would drag into your worlds. Okay? And it's going to bring everything in that Cinema 4D file, the camera, the animation, the figures that I put in there. You don't have to put the figures in. The plane, everything's going to come into the level. You have a geometries folder, which I guess has all of the segmented parts of the little figures. Not important in our case. And then the animations folder has the level sequence file with the animation and the keyframes for the camera movement. That's the level sequence file that we're going to open up. We're not going to create our own. If you were doing the FBX method, you would have to create your own. It's one benefit of using this Cinema 4D workflow. Okay, in the outliner, this is actually kind of a mess with all these figures. Wow. Ow. Whose idea was this? I'm just collapsing all of those. Select. So I don't need to know about all the little parts. So this is the hierarchy of the Cinema 4D file. It's actually the same exact hierarchy as in C4D. So there's a couple roots here. There's the camera, there's the solid on the floor, and then there's 4 figures which are named pelvis. And then all of their parts are nested inside there. That's great. If I was to, if I deleted all these, deleting all of them makes a mess, actually. So they all unnest. Let's just say they weren't there. Then you would drag in your datasmith file like I showed you before, this file. But let's just create a new level. Start at 0. There's nothing here right now. So I just drag in my datasmith file from my content browser. Bam, everything's there again. Okay. And collapse those back down. I usually like to go to the root here and make it 0, 0, 0. Again, keeping consistency from After Effects to C4D to Unreal. If I click on the camera now, I get the little preview that kind of looks like, or doesn't kind of, it looks like frame 0 here. The little preview, not the main window. That's what we want. That's good. Okay, but I don't want just the little preview. I want the whole thing. So at this point, I'm going to open up the animations folder and double click on the level sequence here. This is where my keyframes actually are. And you notice I'm scrubbing this and nothing's happening. You may also notice that my camera is red here. If you know anything about sequencer, you know that when things are red, that means that they have become disconnected. Sequencer doesn't know what 3D tracker camera actually is. It doesn't know which asset to associate with in the world. This has nothing to do with camera tracking. This is just an Unreal thing. So it doesn't know that that 3D tracker camera is that 3D tracker camera. So I need to tell it to do that. So useful Unreal tip for anybody. A quick way to solve this, you can manually do it by right-clicking on it and assign actor and finding it in the list. But if you have a lot of them, it's a bit of a pain in the butt to do. If you click on the little wrench icon in Sequencer and go to Advanced and go to Fix Actor References, wrench, Advanced, Fix Actor References, Unreal usually does a pretty good job at, assuming you haven't renamed stuff in Outliner, it does a pretty good job at identifying the source of that. So now if I click it, and I scrub, it moves. Or if I click the little camera icon in Sequencer, to inherit the camera, make it my screen. Now it's my screen. Ta-da. Awesome. But does it have the video footage? We kind of need the video footage to help us design the world around it, right? So we need to make a media plate like we have done in the past. Pretty simple. I'm going to add, this is just stuff we've done before now. So right click in content browser, media, a couple things we need to make. We need to make an image media source. We need to make a media player, and the media texture will get created when we make the media player. So image media source first, we'll do IMS. I'll just call this green screen. Double click it. The little dots over on the side here, locate on your computer where that image sequence is. I think it's on my downloads. Need to clean this up. The tracking. First one. Set the frame rate, 30 frames a second. Click open just to test that it works. Cool. Save it. Close this window, never to be seen again. Cool. We've done that. Now we need to make a media player. So I'm going to click the add button again. Media player. Get the little pop-up box saying, do you want to create a media texture too? Yes, we do. Okay. Call this MP for media player underscore green screen. Cool. We created the texture too. Now I need to create the material out of the texture. So the texture, the media texture, needs to be turned into a material. So the easiest way to create the material is to right-click it, go to create material. That name is fine with me. Double-click on the material. It's black right now because the video is not playing. We haven't set that up yet. Again, this is what you've done before in here. Change the base color to emissive. Click on the main node here. Change opaque to, or not, we're not changing opaque. Change shading model to unlit. Shading model to unlit. So the video itself can't be lit by lights in Unreal Engine. Usually that's what you want because you want the lighting in the video. Save that. Close that down. Now, this is kind of the last-ish step. We need to add an image plate onto our 3D camera. So let's click the camera in Outliner. Click the camera in Outliner. And down here in the details panel, we want to play with this add button right here on the right to basically add an image plate as a child of the 3D camera. So anywhere the 3D camera goes, the image plate comes along for the ride. It's parented to it. So add, you type in image plate in the search, it will pop up. If it doesn't pop up, it's because you didn't turn on the plugin. Go back and turn it on. Image plate. Doesn't seem like anything happened. Image plate is down here now. It's nested in the 3D camera, but I don't see anything in my main viewport that's different. If I ejected from this camera and I looked at it from the side, I wouldn't see anything. What I need to do, and actually the image plate is, it's right there. It's itty bitty inside the camera. I need to pull that out of the camera. If I pulled it out now, that would be bad because I'm actually in world orientation right here rather than local orientation. You might actually notice that the axis is not, it should be directly in line with the camera. It's not, it's skewed because it's in line with the world, not the camera. If I click on the little globe icon up top here and change this to local instead, now it's a little cube. See, now it's aligned. If I look at it from the side, now it's aligned. So you could pull it out that way, but what I usually like doing is just going over to the details panel. It's usually the X value. It's almost always the X value, at least with Cinema, this pipeline. Click on the image plate in your 3D camera tracker, and then just make this number bigger to pull it out. How far should you pull it out? Well, if I don't pull it out enough, keep pulling, keep pulling. Now it would be a good idea to grab onto the. If I don't pull it out enough, then I start to collide through some of my geometry here, right? The video is not playing yet, but I need to put the image plate behind all of this, right? So I'm going to keep moving my image plate back. Maybe I'll just type in 10,000 or something. That seems okay. And the image plate doesn't look like it's not adapting to my camera movement because it's not supposed to. I haven't put a video on it yet. But now we're going to put the video on it. So click on the image plate in your 3D camera and then scroll down in the details, down, 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 till you get to the material. It has default image plate material. We want to change this to the material that we made for the video. Remember we made this material here just a second ago, this thing. We want to drag this on top of the image plate materials spot. Good. It turned black because the video is not playing. That's fine. Next step, we need to add the media track to sequencer. So add media track. This is something that you've done before. This is just getting videos to play in Unreal Engine. Media track. Click on the little plus next to media track. Media source. Find your media source. I have a couple of them here because it's an older project. The green screen one is what I want. All right, there we go. Actually did snap to the link that time. That's good. If your video doesn't pop up here, it's because you didn't create the media player or the media texture. You didn't pick the right directory for your video. Could be any of those things. We need to click on the media track here, go to properties, and set the media texture down here like we've done before. This is, mine's called green screen video. So yours will be called something different probably. Boop, pops up. Moment of truth. Well, it's playing, that's good. The default Unreal Engine floor is in here. Floor, it's just the thing that comes with like a default level. I'm gonna turn that off or delete it. Did it. Ta-da! Congratulations, you did match motion. And this could be something that you would render out. You know, we've done rendering in here before already, but you could render this out really quick. Except, oh, remember, before you render things out, you need to add a camera cut track, just like we did before, or it won't render your camera view. Oops. So if you just wanted to render out like a preview, remember next class, we're not rendering out from Unreal. Next class, we're gonna render out parts from Unreal, take them back to After Effects, slap them together there. Let's, one more job says unsaved map. Oh, save the map. Save all. Green screen. Render. One more job says unsaved map. Let's delete this one. It's because I didn't create the camera cut track. I'm just re-rendering. No JPEG. Let's just do the video. ProRes, low res. Output's good. Accept. Good. Render. Everything's black. I always get really worried here. Still time for me to crash and burn. Whew, it's taking a long time. Questions while we wait for this? What a process, right? I'm telling you, you're in the flesh with one of the few people that knows how to do this, because it was such a fucking mess of a process to do. And it won't even render. I'm not sure what's going on. It seems like Unreal Engine has now frozen itself. Probably because I have C4D and After Effects and I'm recording. Oh boy, don't make the recording crash, right? Maybe I'm gonna stop recording here. Oh, it's rendering now. Whew. Oh, I forgot to delete the floor. What an amateur. That's like the eyeball does not remove it. It just temporarily turns it off. So delete the floor. Re-render. What a dummy. So the video footage that we've talked about this before with video footage in Unreal, the video footage in Unreal it's never going to look like it does in After Effects or some other compositing program. That's another reason that we do our round trip compositing in the end in post-production, because we can control exactly what the video footage looks like. And heck, if we're working with raw files, like eventually we'll work with Blackmagic Raw, B-Raw, we'll be able to color grade our footage right then and there in the compositing program with the foreground and background layers rendered out from Unreal. Let's see all of our hard work here. Oh boy, where is this project even located? I forgot where I rendered it to. Wow, that is super blown out. How are you downloading? Let's see how it looks in After Effects if it's less blown out. A little bit less blown out. It's because I didn't turn off the tone mapper like we've talked about before. It was also highlighted in the slides. Or did I adjust the auto exposure? Now, does this make sense with these figures, with their shadows half cast on the one plane, with the light coming from the wrong direction? Does this make any sort of realistic sense, lighting wise or world wise? Absolutely not. But does it make sense tracking wise? 100%. That was our goal. Okay? So, I could, but I'm going to get myself in trouble now. I'm still recording. I'm get myself in trouble trying to do something here, but oh, this is Megascans, by the way. I don't know if all of you know what Megascans are. I'm just doing stuff right now. This is actually kind of an important thing to talk about because I think we briefly mentioned Megascans before, but if you don't know how to use them, Megascans is this library of about 18,000 different super high resolution textures and high resolution 3D scans of real world objects that are freely available, well, for a little bit longer, freely available to Unreal Engine users. Sorry, I'm just looking for my security code here. Four three 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 60. And you can get these by clicking on the Quickly Add button and going to Quixel Bridge for the time being. I say the time being because all of this is changing in the month of October. And after December, all of these free things are going to go away. It's terrible. It's a travesty. But also, we've been very blessed to have all of these things for the last 4 years freely available. All that Fortnite money was keeping Epic afloat, and now like, Epic's cutting costs or something. I don't know. They're moving to a new platform called Fab. If you have an Epic account, you've probably been getting spammed in email about this. I don't know too much about Fab. We'll talk about it a little bit more in the future. There's also a way somebody's made a script to go through the Quixel Bridge website and add every single Quixel asset, the 18,000 assets, to add them to your account. Because if they're added to your account, you own them forever. If you wait till January, you're going to have to pay for asset packs. So if you look up Quixel Bridge, Fab, script, you'll find it's just like a little web browser script. And hopefully Epic doesn't ban our accounts for the people that have done this. I did it. I think we'll be all right because this doesn't officially go away till next semester, but it is something new that is happening in the Unreal Engine world that's a little sad. Anyways, I'm trying to download, or I'm trying to log in actually, but now I'm downloading a super high resolution asset. If you don't know what Megascans is, the assets are amazing. Like building with Legos, something kick-ass in Unreal Engine that looks photorealistic and better than you can ever photo scan yourself. They're great. Like an amazing resource for Unreal Engine users. Everything from animal skulls to dead trees to we have lots of rocks, tons of rocks. You know, if you want to make vehicle splashes, medieval banquet, whatever the hell this is, like if you want a 3D scan of a pork pie, we got it right here. Or here's your smoked sausage. These are actual 3D scans with super high resolution textures. The one caveat about using these things is that because they look so kick-ass, they're also very, very dense 3D models, very computationally intense. And they take up lots of hard drive space. So be prepared if you add these to your project. If you can barely run Unreal Engine when you have this and your computer barely runs it, and you start opening up Megascans, it's going to get even slower. I talk a little bit more about Megascans when we start making our final projects. Just a little bit more how-tos if it's valuable. Oh, I never downloaded the ground. Whoops. They also have textures and materials and stuff too that are all photorealistic. If your goal is to make photorealistic things, Megascans is your best friend. High quality? Sure, why not? Free. Typically, something like this would cost a good bit of money. I'm just going to add it to the world and try to get myself into trouble, but I'm going to try to put a ground underneath her. Although I won't be able to put anything behind her because she's not cut out yet. But if I keyed her out in After Effects, then I could render it out and put it behind her. But that's for next week. Downloading. Any questions? So what should you be doing for next week? Well, you should be looking at the footage and picking what parts you want to use and thinking about what your video is. What world are you building? What is happening? What time in the footage are you using? What are you making? How long should it be? I don't know. I hate that question. The footage isn't very long. The question is the worst. How long should it be? You can make something really long that really sucks. Or you can make something really short that is fucking awesome. It's like, how many Photoshop layers should I have? It's a terrible question to ask. Make it good. That's what I said. Make it good. And if you're using the match motion footage, which is a bonus. It's not a requirement. Match motion footage, all this stuff that we did today, just a bonus. You should still try it because it's pretty cool, but it's just a bonus because it is much more involved and we don't have time to spend breaking everything down. Historically, Webb knows this. Historically, this class today and next week is actually 3 separate classes. We've sucked it all into one. Why? Because historically, now that we have the LED wall, nobody does this pipeline. They just shoot on the goddamn LED wall. Historically, before the LED wall, not last year, but the year before, and every year before that, this was the pipeline that we did. It was a green screen pipeline. That being said, all of these things that we learn in here, these ideas of tracking, they're still super valuable things to know, and also super valuable for you to know when you don't have a when you don't have an LED wall, you know. Or, like I said earlier, with LED walls, almost always that's not the final shot. They are not recording what's on the LED wall in camera. They're putting green screen in and then doing a traditional pipeline like we just did today. For your finals, most likely what you see on the wall is going to be what you're shooting, just because we don't have time. That's why I show you these pipelines. So add this to project. Webb, I can't believe I did it. I really condensed it, and a lot of stuff came out of my mouth today, but there's 9 minutes left, and let's do more. That's next week. So here we go. We have this rock formation, but look at it. It's flying by my camera because it's way out in the foreground and it's super tiny. That's because it's not located at 0, 0, 0. We've looked at this at really basic primitive assets. Now let's look at it with a really high quality asset. I'm going to set this to 0, 0, 0. So now it's on the floor, but it's really tiny. So I'm going to blow it up. Scale it up, scale it up. Big, 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 big. We want to put this. I'm just riffing, right? I'm not trying to make anything beautiful. Where do we want to move this? Let's move this extremely in the foreground. So let's go like, I don't know, 3,000. Oh my gosh. You start to imagine it now? Look at this. If we keyed her out, then we could put the rocks behind her too. You're probably looking at this and you're like, oh, there's some rocks on a lot of green. There's some weird figures that are entrapped in the rocks. Why am I taking this class? Baby steps. We can't put anything behind her right now because if we did, it's going to cover her up, right? Although now it kind of, if you imagine we rotoscoped out her legs, she would be standing on the rocks, right? And if we match the lighting, her lighting is kind of all around, so we'd have to make a cloudy day. We could start to match all that stuff together. It's amazing. It's unreal, right? See what I did there? There was the question about importing FBX files straight into Sequencer. If you're confused about everything that's come out of my mouth today, ignore the next 90 seconds. If you want to import an FBX camera into Sequencer directly, you click on the little wrench icon. Yeah, it is the wrench icon. You go to, no, it's not the wrench icon. It is the, no, it is the wrench icon. Where's it at? I knew I was going to get into trouble. This is why you don't go off script. Oh, it is the, yeah, it is the wrench icon, duh. I knew what I was doing the whole time. The wrench icon in sequencer. Again, this is not the C4D pipeline. This is if you have like a camera from Blender that you don't even have to camera track it. Maybe you just animated it in Blender, camera in Blender going around, or whatever program, Maya, whatever. Click the wrench icon, go up to import, wrench, import. I don't have an FBX camera to import, but see it says FBX right there. The USD, yeah. Window, I don't have the plugin enabled, but it would be window USD. Yeah, plugins, USD. Universal scene descriptor file. Sort of is going to function like the C4D file, but it's not just C4D. USD files are non-proprietary. They're supposed to work across all softwares. At least that's the dream. Except companies like Maxon are like, fuck you, I'm not going to have support for USD files that's any good, which is unfortunate. So it makes things really difficult. Yeah, I don't have it on, but then there will be a whole menu where you import the USD file, but it's a separate menu. But it imports very similar to how we did the C4D and Datasmith. It's just, it's not C4D. Yeah, I was going to say something, but that's it. So next week, we are going to render out, if I wanted to put these rocks behind her, for instance, I know this scene is really kind of really dumb right now, but if I wanted to put these rocks behind her, I'm going to render out these rocks using a stencil layer, which we'll talk about next week, to just cut out the rocks. And then I'm going to bring just the rocks into After Effects as a piece, as an image sequence. And I'm going to slap the green screen footage of her over top. I'm going to key out the green screen footage of her. So now she's not on green screen anymore. Now she's cut out. Now she's standing on rocks. Right? And then we're going to put something in front of her, maybe other rocks, I don't know, very interesting rocks on top of rocks. To make her feel encompassed by that, we'll render out the rocks before. And we'll put that as another layer in After Effects on top. Sandwich the video footage between the foreground and the background. You could have multiple foregrounds and backgrounds. It really depends on what you're trying to do. If we were using Composure, we could import a rotoscoped version of her into Unreal and composite here in this window. But we're not going to get Composure. Too confusing. But I hope that you can start to see the bits and pieces here of how this is coming together. Or maybe you just see a goofy scene and are questioning your decisions in life. I know I am. Okay. I think that's it. Job well done.